So I've been considering the Palestinian issue and like, you know, what how do you change their society enough to to make an effective change so that they're not radicalizing when they get somewhere else, you know, like they're doing right now. Um and and the thought is um well, they can't teach themselves, and for the foreseeable future shouldn't govern themselves for at least 50 years or so because of the necessity for societal change. Like, they need to understand that they've been thoroughly defeated and like be taught that they were defeated, and know that no amount of rising up is going to um, change that for them. So my thought was like, all right, well, you know, they do a lot of farming stuff and maybe some textiles and stuff like that, and, uh, import and export and stuff, and they're decent enough at trade. Not as good as the Jews or even the Egyptians are, but they do trade a little bit. They can fish, um, and they've gotten the whole video thing down with the Pallywood and all that stuff. I don't think that's really a, a thing that should be allowed anymore, but okay. If they go somewhere else, they'll probably take that knowledge with them. And looking at their cities, they know how to build with concrete. They know how to build with stone. And so, well, if you put them somewhere where there's material available, and don't provide so much funding. They don't need funding. Nobody, whatever happens, they don't need to be funded. They might need to be given a little bit of food to get started, given supplies for agriculture, whatever, for irrigation or for desalination or for um, basic house building necessities. I wouldn't give them the big stuff, the small stuff like water pumps and like, irrigation pipe, and like, maybe some well pipe or whatever, or you know, do a loan on for desalination equipment where like they have to pay it back. They lost, they have to pay it back. They don't get to walk away from this as a win-win situation. They lost, and they have to know that they lost, and they have to know that they have to pay for it. And not only that, but they need that the Palestinians as a whole need to pay reparations to Israel for attacking them. Like, that has to be paid. And so if the Palestinians are deported, put somewhere else, that generational burden needs to be paid to Israel. Like, because they've been attacking Jews for a long time, so the Jews need to come up with a number of human beings that lost their lives to the Gazans and to the Palestinians before that, and a head count for blood money, and it needs to be put on their heads. And so the thought is like that sounds bad. It's not really. It's not bad, because the way they think is, unless that God is punishing them, and they have to feel that they're being punished, they're not going to change. They're not going to change. And even if they do feel that, they'll be like, oh, oppression this, oppression that, blah, 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 blah. When it's like, hey, you did something really stupid and you lost a fight, you lost a war, and like, you know, it's not oppression. You're just paying for it. That's all. And so think about that. It's like, all right, well, how do you deal with somebody that generationally, and then, you know, the next generation is gonna be like, my ancestors did that, I didn't do that. It's like, yeah, well, hate to say this, but you're still alive because of mercy, so you have to pay for it too, you know. And it needs to be ingrained in them over generations. Like, that was done to the Germans, and it worked, at least so far, right? So do it again, you know. It needs to be done by multiple nations. I think that the Israelis need to be responsible for developing their education system, and they need to be forced to attend to it. Their children need to be forced to attend. And because, like, if they're raised by the radical jihadists, well, they're just going to do it again. And even in their own house, they'll do it again. And they'll complain about, oh, well, the oppression, teaching this and that, whatever, you know, like, when it comes to Palestine, it doesn't need to be a very long thing. It's like, the Jews and the Palestinians have had bad blood for generations. We fought, and the Palestinians lost. And there was lots of death and destruction before then. And don't do it again. Like, well, I mean, and teach other history. Like, it doesn't need to be some huge burden. You know, like, don't make it a huge thing. I mean, I know Jews will. They'll be like, oh, you did this to us, da, 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 and they'll really grind it in. And maybe that does need to happen. It probably does. But, like, it also creates a lot of generational animosity. Because it's like, they've done that to other peoples in the world, and other peoples are like, man, that was like 2 generations ago. I don't even know who hurt you, you know, and the whole world kind of feels like that when they get like that. However, there's no other good solution to the problem right now, and I think the smartest thing to do with the Palestinians is, like, you know, give them intelligent agricultural knowledge. They've been exposed to Jews, so they should have it. They should be able to do that on their own really well. Building technology, they should have it. I mean, looking at the high-rise buildings that got destroyed by the Israelis, they're obviously able to build out of concrete or stone or whatever very well. So, like, just give them a way to earn the materials or make the materials, and, like, export all their stuff, all their what do you call that? Machinery from Gaza that the Israelis don't want to use that's left over. And if the Israelis want to keep it, well, let them keep it. So what? You know, like, but just give them, you know, I'm not saying settle them for free. Don't settle the Palestinians somewhere else for free. Make them pay for the cost of the settlement. Okay? And don't let them educate themselves again. Okay? Like, if they get settled somewhere, Islam needs to be outlawed. Jihadist Islam needs to be outlawed there. And it needs to be watched. And yeah, that's going to create, like, underground movements and all this and other stuff. They're going to do that anyway. Do you want it above ground or below ground? Okay? And if it's below ground and they start shooting rockets again, it's time to bomb them again. You know? And the hope is, if you move them and you teach the majority of the population, hey, you lost the battle, you're never coming back. Um, and if you do it again, well, then all the countries of the world are just going to show up on the seashore with a boat and shoot rockets right back at you until your city's flattened, and and they're not going to be as kind as the Jews were, and you just tell them that, well, and you just tell them, like, the rest of the world kind of likes Jews because, well, they create the technology in the world, and too bad you don't, that's kind of what you have to do with the situation, like, and there's no nice way to do it. You can't just give them a resort cities and stuff. They're not Americans. They're not Europeans. They're not Jews. They're not even, folks from Saudi Arabia. They're not Chinese. They're not Japanese. They're Palestinian. It's a completely different generational society, genetic crazy, and like permanent deep loathing of Jews. Like, they have it ingrained worse than the Nazis ever had it. Okay? And the Nazis killed a lot of people, and that's saying something, But when you look at the generational killing by Palestinians of Jews, it's much, much greater than the amount of Jews that the Germans killed, by far. Like, it goes way back. All right, so, and they need to be put somewhere, like, where they don't have to compare themselves with Jews, because part of the problem with the Palestinian issue is like, I hate to say it, but the Jews treat them like dumb monkeys. Okay, they treat them like stupid animals. And well, that's offensive. Maybe they are, but maybe they aren't. But that's offensive, And so, if you're put somewhere where you have nobody else to compare yourself with except yourself, like off by yourself, somewhere in the Red Sea area, on the Egyptian coast, and you can't even compare yourself to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians are just like, you're refugees, you don't get to vote, you don't get to mess with our government. And if the Muslim Brotherhood tangles with you, and we find out, well, they become part of your refugee camp. They lose their citizenship, and they have to go to the refugee city and stay, right? So that's kind of like, all right, well, that's pretty serious, right? That's a big thing, and it would give Egypt somewhere to put all their radical Muslims. And if they want to fence it off and wall it off and say, well, that's the limit to your land, and you can't come through this gate at all because there's only desert on the other side anyway. Fine, like, whatever, maybe the Jews or maybe the United States or somebody else would help set that kind of thing up. I think it's fairly smart, but like, some human populations have to be controlled, okay, for their own good, so they can survive. Because if they go attacking somebody else again that's got, like, major military, like, they're dumb enough to try to attack U.S. ships and stuff going through the Red Sea. So guaranteed, within 10 years of having set up there, as soon as they can get their rocket production up, I guarantee that they will probably be doing something stupid again. So how do you change a society like that? Well, keep killing the crazy ones until they're gone, I guess. And if they're all crazy, well, it's the only solution. And that's the thing that the Bible says, is like, he tells the Jew, Yahweh, he tells the Jews, drive them out, don't let them return. If they're peaceable, let them stay. And once they're driven out, I will cause them to perish, right? And that's the reason, is because their society is not, it's not like, it's not like the rest of the world. It's very different. And they're, I don't know, they're only capable of peace if they're enslaved. The Ottoman Empire, that's what the Ottoman Empire did to the Palestinians. They enslaved them. And that's a history lesson. Like they were peaceful during that time. There was a couple uprisings, but they were more or less peaceful than they have been the last 100 years, with the whole world supporting them and letting them be free. Like that is like, that sounds like horrible, right? That's terrible. That's a terrible thing. But that's what the Arabs did with them, because the Arabs knew what they were like. Okay? And so, like, that's a completely different thing. And if they go up to Turkey, well, how long do you think it's going to be before they start fighting Turkish oppression, right? And starting to cause bombings in their society? Because Turkey has beaches where the women go out there and they're publicly, almost nude on the beach and stuff like that. Do you really think the Palestinians are going to get along with that? And I don't think it'll work out too good for Turkey. Um, so I don't know what to say about that, except for that's a thing that shouldn't be done, like to send them to Turkey, you know. Um, the only thing that's going to work out is putting them in Egypt somewhere, because that's the only other biblical place where, like, they're prophetically talked about being. I don't know for how long or anything like that. And so that's kind of like, well, what are you going to do, It's not nice. So, I mean, and if you, if you really wanted to, just to remind them, you load up all the rubble of their cities, and that's what you create their port with, to remind them you were destroyed. You're never going back again, not even to worship, right? And you build monuments of destruction out of the homes that they did, to remind them, because they're not normal human beings. Like, they have to have a generational reminder year after year after year to look at, and it's going to cause them grief and sadness. But, well, it is what it is. And I don't know what else to say, except that, like, the whole, like, Jewish Palestinian thing is like, there's a problem with the Jews in power getting in control and not even doing what their fellow Jews want. Jews generationally have had problems with valuing human life above the words of Yahweh, Ahi. Right? So that, you know, like, they've had choices over the years to kill these folks for a long time. And so my perspective on that is like, all right, well, the most American can do, the most the Middle East can do for the situation to solve it permanently is to just say, okay, the Palestinians fought the Israelis, they lost. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in there and we're going to round up the Palestinians and we're going to take them somewhere else and put them there. And, you know, if they want to take all their junk and all the rubble from Gaza or whatever, I'm sure the Jews would be fine with that because it's like all destroyed and stuff, you know? Like, let them build a city out of the rubble. I don't care. As a great big thing for them to understand, okay, every time we see this, we've been defeated. You know, Isaiah 19 talks about the city of destruction, you know, and well, maybe that's what that was supposed to be, is a city built from the remnants of Gazan destruction. So that's kind of like, it's not going to be a nice PR thing. It's going to be like, you got conquered PR. You have to remember that you were conquered, because if you don't remember and you start causing trouble again, then you're going to get killed. You know? And probably like build a great big monument that says exactly that. Like, you got conquered, and if you cause trouble again, you will get killed. And don't let them tear it down. You know? The Egyptians, for hundreds of years, haven't wanted to have anything to do with the Palestinians. They do not want them people over there. That's where the Bible prophesies it to happen, though. So that's where it goes. And all I have to say about that is like, if Egypt accepts it, I'm saying without saying, well, let me put it like this. If Egypt lets the prophecy happen, then good things can happen for Egypt, because that's what's written. Okay? And there's no other way around that. Like, if Egypt wants to start prospering and wants to be seen by the merciful eye of God and wants Yahweh and Jesus to be merciful to them, they will let the Palestinians have 5 cities somewhere in Egypt that is basically desert. Okay? There's no good solution for it, and I understand that nobody, like, politically really wants to get involved with policing it, especially in this day and age. But like, it would be have to be a thing where, like, their internet would have to be controlled so that they're not allowed to visit Islamic religious sites and stuff. Like, you would have to, like, limit what can be seen by them, limit the way they're, or have somebody else regulate, somebody that's not anti-Semitic regulate their school systems. And if their children don't go and they grow up stupid, well, fine, you know, like, it's your choice if you don't want to be educated. But don't let them set up their own schools anymore because they teach jihad. you know? And, you know, if they go over there and re-elect something that's like Hamas, well, you know where their terrorism headquarters are going to be. It's going to be under all the hospitals and stuff. So it's like, all right, well, that seems to be their mode of operation, and anywhere they go at this point is like, you're looking at a problem. We all know it's a problem. Can we mitigate this problem enough that nobody's going to care if they shoot a rocket at somebody, and then whoever got that rocket shot at them goes over there and puts the ruffle stomp on them? You know, like, oh yeah, you want to mess with our trade ships? Boom, fine. You know, like, that's the only solution for the problem in the long term. Like, the world should know that. Having said that, it does give them the option to try and be peaceable. Whether they choose to or not, and I would say not. I've talked with God a little bit about that, and like really prayed, and you know, like, okay, I understand these human beings, to the world that is, seem to have value. But they've been defeated and they shouldn't be allowed to stay. So don't let them stay in Gaza. The Israelis conquered it. And by conquered, I mean conquered it. And so, deport the ones that are conquered. Right? Very simple. That's kind of what needs to happen, you know? And so there's no other better political solution. There's no two-state solution in Israel. Like, it's just not. Like, the Palestinians don't want to coexist. It's not that the Israelis can't. It's that Palestinians don't want to. And then they fought and they lost. Okay? So their fight's over. It's done with. The fight's over. There are no homes to go back to in Gaza. Maybe a few. But most of them have been destroyed. Most of Gaza has been destroyed. There's nowhere for a lot of these people to go back to. And if they go back, they're just going back to sand and rubble on the ground and like trying to dig through it and find stuff. And it's like, you're not going to find much. Gather up what you can. Time to go. You know? So it's a thing that's like, all right, think about it. And like consider that, and like you know, like, I know that Egypt has problems. Like, Egypt as a country, like, has this tiny little strip of fertile land like along the Nile, and all the rest of it is like desert, you know, it's badly managed desert. And the only other thing you could do is say, okay, well, Egypt, if you take these Palestinians and we build cities for them, well, we'll consider investing in resort areas along the Red Sea and in desert agriculture and aquaculture. And the benefit of that is, like, they're right on a trade route, both to China and to East Africa and to the Middle East countries and to Europe and North Africa. They're on a massive trade route. So if you can put food production anywhere over there, they're going to make money because they have the shortest route to everybody. Okay, if you can put a resort area over there, they're going to make a lot of money because it gets visited. So, so the key to this is like telling the Egyptians, we're going to help you create the businesses that become successful. In exchange for a place to put the Palestinians. Now, the Egyptians should just do it because it's the right thing to do. But they've already got Islamic problems in Egypt and they don't like it. And so, well, how do you ask a country that's already got problems like that to take more problems? And the only way to do it is to be like, okay, we're gonna make you more like the ancient trade civilization than you used to be. How about that? Like if you give them that offer, and like give them an offer, we're gonna take human beings from all over the world that are intelligent, entrepreneurial men that aren't just Egyptians, and we're gonna put them there, and you listen to them, and they will help you build your society. Like, they might go for that. Okay, and that's really the trade, because like if you try to do that in Jordan, I can tell you what's going to happen. When Jesus returns, all those human beings are going to get slaughtered, that entire civilization. There will be no escape for Palestinians that go to Jordan. It's just the way it is. They're going to die. Because that's land that Israel is promised in the future. So, like, if you want to do something good for the Palestinians, you have to put them somewhere else. They can't go to Syria. They can't go to Lebanon. They can't go to Jordan. Okay? They can go to Egypt. That's it. And that's my studies of prophecy, is like, that's kind of like a very concerning thing, and it sounds racist, but it's not really looking at it from a racist perspective. It's looking at like, my God hates these people. The Jews don't want to kill them all. What can we do that fulfills the prophecy and doesn't just immediately cause a genocide? That's the perspective I'm coming at this from. And personally, like, I would have just been like, yeah, fine, do what God says, wipe them out, be done with it, like. But he's given enough leniency in there. Yahweh has given enough leniency in there to give the Jews and anybody helping the Jews a path to a different solution than just like kill them all, right? So that's what you do. You take them to Egypt, create 5 cities. One's going to be called the City of Destruction. Could be anywhere in Egypt, but I prefer that area that I talked about in the other video in the Red Sea, on the coast, because that's what they're used to. And don't let them become citizens of Egypt, because they should never be citizens of Egypt generationally. They shouldn't be allowed to govern because they're not good at governing themselves. They elected terrorists. And I think if that's said, and that the Egyptians will be like, oh, that's not a bad idea. Like, we might have a little bit of problem with them cooperating with this other group over here, but as long as they can't vote, yeah, should be a little bit better. And you have to realize the United States Navy is in the Red Sea all the time. So it's not a matter of like who's going to police this area. The United States is like right there. You know, we don't even probably need to build a military base or anything close to that area, because there's so many ships going through that, like, if they start causing a problem, it's like, okay, here we go again. And this time it won't be the Jews, you know, that kind of thing. So consider that. Think about it, and I don't know what to say. Like, I've given this a lot of thought, and like, you know, to some extent, it's taken a lot out of me, maybe, and and like, from a Christian religious perspective, I don't understand why the whole world values Jewish enemies as much as they do. Okay? I don't get it. Like, but for the sake of what needs to be done, okay. Put them in Egypt. Let them have 5 cities. Fulfills prophecy. You know, who knows how long they're going to be there. They might not last that long. And it can be an exile city for Egyptian criminals too, so whatever, you know. Yep. I don't know what else to say about it. It sounds bad. But it's what needs to happen, and don't it's the only good feasible solution where they can more or less govern they're a tiny area, not allowed to teach themselves, not allowed to control their own internet service. Go over there and work and build and whatever, and if you cause trouble, well, we'll deal with that. So, like, and that's the only thing I can come up with, because there's nothing better. There's no nice way to sugarcoat this, and they have to be, like, forced into understanding that they have been conquered, and that no, the Egyptians don't want them to become preeminent in Egypt. And I think that's reasonable, because they were conquered, you know. And if the Egyptians want to tax them heavily eventually, well, whatever, you know, like, it's their choice, you know, like, once they're over there and they're residing in their country, they got to pay taxes. And they also need to pay reparations to the Jews. So that's reasonable. And you know, like, if you are in a country that's conquered, and you know, a lot of times war reparations go on for generations afterwards from the conquered country. Okay? It's not the conqueror that pays reparations. It's the folks that got defeated that pay. Right? So think about that. That's what if I was in the presidency, or if I was over there, you know, in Netanyahu's seat, that's what I would do. Actually, I probably would have been like, turn the military loose and just bomb the entire place flat, and who in the world cares about genocide? That's what I would have really done. But because of the political concern, I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, this is the political, not completely godly solution, but the sneaky, conniving way out. And it kind of feels like, even with this kind of thing, like, it fulfills prophecy and all that stuff, but it feels like you're not really trying to do what's right when you do this. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like God's command has really been fulfilled in the honesty of it, okay? Because when you read through what's supposed to happen to them folks, it's like, drive them out, kill them, you know. Like, you got prophecies that they shall laugh as they dash their babies' heads against the rocks and stuff like that. Okay, talking about the Israelis conquering the Palestinians, and it's like, dude, when you look at like that kind of prophecy, and you look at what's being done, yeah, no, those are two different things, and like maybe that's because things happen at two different times, right? Maybe it's because the Gazan residents are gone, most of them gone, by the time Jesus returns, and the leftovers are like, well, after the Messiah is here, there's no doubt that anybody that's against the Jews in the land is just going to be killed. That's the prophecy with that, right? So, and that's pretty much, you go against Israel when the Messiah appears, when Jesus returns, death. That simple. If there's generational hatred between the countries, the whole country gets wiped out. Like, there's a lot of prophecies about that, like concerning the area in Jordan and parts of Western Saudi Arabia, and like, southern Syria and southern Lebanon. Yeah, it's not going to be pretty for the folks that currently live there. And then you have the worldwide war between Jesus and the rest of the world that comes up to attack Jerusalem. So that's not going to be pretty either. So, I got a black spot on my clothes. Well, whatever. So that's the thought about that, and it comes from looking at a lot of different Bible verses and going, I got to rein back my crazy a little bit. Maybe don't get out there and say just genocide them all. And what else can be done prophetically other than that? Because when you read through the Bible, it's like sometimes prophecy gives multiple solutions, and when it does, it means you can do a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of this other, and that's how it gets fulfilled. Okay? So a part of them are going to be for sure just killed. Okay? A part of them are for sure going to be scattered all over the place and probably enslaved by other cultures and treated like just despicably. And a part of them are going to be in the 5 cities in Egypt, and a part of them are definitely going to be slain by Jesus and the saints at the return, right? And we're speaking specifically of the Palestinians. So in all cases, they're just not destined for a very good life unless they end up in Egypt. Okay? And there's no nice way to say that. And even if they go to Egypt, I don't know how that's going to be handled. Right? Because Arabs typically don't treat other Arabs very nice. That's what we saw with the last time that happened in Jordan and in Syria and Lebanon. So just consider what you do politically. If it's an area that's easily accessible by anybody else in the world, then if Egypt is having a problem, they can call for help. That's the way I look at it. Locate them where it's easy to give that country help when they need it. I think that's the right thing to do. And other than that, if bad things start to happen to them after they're driven out, just know that that's God. That's Yahweh, He, that's doing it. So, all right. that's my thoughts on that. And you know, there's smarter, more intelligent folks than me that can develop a better plan. By all means, do it according to the Bible. And just explain it. Explain it. Okay, well, we've studied the religion. And well, if there is a God, and there is a God, and this is what God wanted done, just tell them there is a God, and this is what God wanted done, and we studied it. Well, this is what we're going to do because we don't think anything better is going to work out. The Arabs can understand that. They're like, oh, okay. And Christians will be like, oh, okay, maybe I need to study this a little bit. And the rest of the world is going to be like, no, we don't like it, blah, 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 blah. You just hate them people. Let them say whatever they want. You know, they're going to anyway. Just do it according to the Bible. And if anybody asks, give them intelligent reasons about, you know, why they're going to another coastal area, why they're going to Egypt in particular, why they're going to the Red Sea on a trade route instead of somewhere else that would put them out in the middle of a desert with no water. And just be obvious about it. Be like, well, if they're here, we can give them aid or whatever. Or if they cause trouble, we can do things, right? And I think that's the way to handle it, because there's no way to handle it without outside intervention for the Egyptians, because the Egyptians are going to want help. So give them help, right? So, yeah, I think that for the situation, like if the right person is asking, and if Trump goes to Egypt, and I hope that Trump goes to Egypt, then this thing can happen. And if he sends equally smart folks over there to Cairo, then it'll happen. If he goes barking up the wrong tree in Jordan, well, somebody needs to tell him, don't go there. That's the wrong place. That's the wrong direction. It's not going to work out good like you think it is. Okay? So, just consider that. All right, y'all. Old Jesse out. We'll see how this works out. Hopefully it'll be all right.